Değerli misafirlerimiz, IFS 2014'te programımıza kaldığımız yerden devam ediyoruz. Şimdi yenilikçi kalkınma ve altyapı finansmanı yöntemleri başlıklı oturumumuz başlayacak. Oturumumuzun moderatörlüğünü Hazine Müsteşarlığı Dış Ekonomik İlişkiler Genel Müdürü Sayın Hakan Tokaç yapacak. Hakan Tokaç'ın konukları ise HSBC Global Capital Financing Yöneticisi Muhammed Davut, Kazana Nasyonel Bernard CFO'su Muhat İzani Gani, Maliye Bakanlığı Bölüm Başkanı Dr. Klaus Michel Hope, KfW Kalkınma Bankası Güneydoğu Avrupa ve Türkiye Direktörü Christoph Tiskens. Buyurunuz.
Saygıdeğer katılımcılar, değerli basın mensupları, kıymetli panelistler, İstanbul Finans Zirvesi'nin ikinci oturumuna hepinize hoş geldiniz diyerek başlamak istiyorum. Oturuma başlamadan önce bu yıl 5.'sini gerçekleştirdiğimiz ve İstanbul'umuzun uluslararası bir finans merkezi olması yolundaki çalışmalarımıza çok önemli katkı sağlayan bu zirveyi düzenleyen organizasyon komitesine teşekkürlerimi iletmek istiyorum. Bu oturumda çok değerli 4 tane panelistimiz var. Panelistlerimizle birlikte yenilikçi kalkınma ve altyapı finansman yöntemleri konularını ele alacağız. Zamanımız kısıtlı 4 tane konuşmacıya göre. Yaklaşık 1 saat içinde panelimizi, oturumumuzu tamamlamayı planlıyoruz. Dolayısıyla şöyle bir yöntem izlemeyi düşünüyorum panelimizde. Önce ben kısa bir genel bilgi sunduktan sonra konuşmacılarımıza sırasıyla 10'ar dakika kendi alanlarında bilgi vermeleri için söz takdim edeceğim. Daha sonra süre kalırsa sizlerden soru cevap almayı planlıyoruz. Şimdi ben kendi kısmımla ilgili size bir genel bilgi vermek istiyorum. Gelişmekte olan ülkelerin kesintisiz, yüksek ve sürdürülebilir bir kalkınma ivmesi yakalayabilmeleri, gelişmiş ülkelerin ise eskiyen altyapılarını yenilemek için ciddi bir finansman ihtiyaçları ile karşı karşıya olduğu hepinizin malumu olduğu gibi aşikardır. Bu konuda çeşitli kurumların farklı çalışmaları vardır. Yapılan bir çalışmaya göre gelişmekte olan ülkelerin hızlı şehirleşme, büyüme, bölgesel ve küresel entegrasyon ihtiyacına cevap vermek için her yıl yaklaşık 1 trilyon dolar yatırım finansmanı ihtiyacı bulunmaktadır. Öte yandan bildiğiniz gibi birçok kamu maliyesinin karşı karşıya bulunduğu açıklar, bankacılık sektörüne getirilen daha sıkı düzenlemeler ve çok taraflı kalkınma bankalarının sermaye kısıtları gibi nedenlerden dolayı bugüne kadarki geleneksel finansman yöntemlerinin yerine yeni alternatif finansman arayışları başlamıştır. Bu itibarla bu kapsamda özellikle hem ülkelerde hem de uluslararası platformlarda bu arayışlar yoğunluk kazanmıştır. Örneğin G20 platformunda yatırım ve altyapı finansmanı önemli bir başlık olarak karşımıza çıkmaktadır. Öncelikli konulardan bir tanesidir. Kısaca değinmem gerekirse temel olarak 4 başlık G20 altyapı ve yatırım finansmanında ele alınmaktadır. Bunlardan bir tanesi sermaye piyasalarıyla ilgili yurt içi yatırım ortamının iyileşmesinin desteklenmesi için atılacak adımlar tartışılmaktadır. Diğer yandan özel sektör ve kurumsal yatırımcıların yatırımlara aracılık etmesi için nasıl çalışmalar yapılabilir bunlar konuşulmaktadır. Bir başka konu çok taraflı ve bölgesel kalkınma bankalarının faaliyetlerinin optimize edilmesi için çalışmalar yürütülmektedir. Diğer bir önemli konu ise proje süreçlerinin iyileştirilmesidir. Bunlar G20 konusundaki yapılan çalışmalar. Burada aramızda Mr. Happe G20'deki bu çalışma grubunun eş başkanlığını yapmaktadır. Kendisinden bu konuda daha detaylı bilgi alabileceğimizi düşünüyorum. Diğer taraftan bugün konuk ettiğimiz bir yatırımcı sınıfından bahsetmek istiyorum. Ülke yatırım fonlarının Sovereign Wealth Funds olarak bilinen 2000'li yılların başından bu yana giderek önemli bir oyuncu olarak öne çıktığını görüyoruz. Sovereign Wealth Fund'lar tarafından yönetilen fon miktarı son 5 yılda üst üste artış göstermiş ve 5.8 trilyon dolara ulaşmıştır. Ayrıca ülkelerin emeklilik fonları, kalkınma fonları, kamu iktisadi kuruluşların fonları aracılığıyla sahip oldukları tutar 7.2 trilyon dolar ve resmi döviz rezervi olarak ise 8.1 trilyon dolar bulunmaktadır. Böylelikle Sovereign Wealth Fund ülkelerinin toplam 20 trilyon dolarlık bir fona erişimi bulunmakta olup bu kadar büyük bir miktarın kalkınma ve altyapı yatırımları için ne kadar önemli olduğu kuşkusuz dikkat çekicidir. Diğer bir konu ise İslami finansman konusudur. Son olarak bu İslami finans konusundan bahsetmek istiyorum. Küresel İslami finansal varlıkların büyüklüğü 2006 yılında 209 milyar dolar seviyesinden 2013 yılında çok dikkat çekici şekilde 1,8 trilyon dolar seviyesine yükselmiştir. Küresel sukuk ihraçları ise 2013 yılında toplam yaklaşık 120 milyar dolar seviyesine ulaşmıştır. Öte yandan proje sukuk ihraçlarının toplam sukuk ihraç içindeki payının sadece %10 seviyesinde olduğunu görüyoruz. Bu ihraçların hemen hepsi yurt içi piyasalarda gerçekleştirilmiştir. Önümüzdeki dönemde proje sukuk ihraçlarının payının artacağını tahmin ediyoruz. Değerli katılımcılar, Türkiye'de son yıllarda alternatif finansman yöntemlerini yaygınlaştırmaya yönelik kurumsal ve hukuki çerçeveyi güçlendirme yönünde çok önemli adımlar atılmıştır. Bu çalışmalar esas olarak kamu özel işbirliği, PPP olarak bilinen modelin özellikle ulaştırma sektöründe çok daha yoğun biçimde kullanılması ve bu modelin geleneksel sektörler dışında kalan sağlık ve eğitim gibi alanlarda da yaygınlaştırılması üzerine yoğunlaştırılmıştır. İslami finans açısından ülkemizde önemli çalışmalar yapılmıştır. SPK tarafından 2010 ve 2013 yılında yayınlanan tebliğler ile özel sektör kuruluşlarının sırasıyla kira sertifikası ve diğer sukuk ihraç edebilmesi imkanı sağlanmıştır. 2012 yılında yapılan kanuni düzenleme ile Hazine Müsteşarlığı'nın kira sertifikası ihraç edebilmesi mümkün olmuştur. Bugüne kadar gerçekleştirilen ihraçlar ile Hazine Müsteşarlığı uluslararası sukuk ihraçları 2,75 milyar dolar seviyesinde olmuştur. Ve bununla beraber yurt içi piyasalarda 6,3 milyar dolar seviyeye ulaşan sukuk ihracı gerçekleştirilmiştir. Şimdi bu genel çerçevenin ardından ben sırasıyla konuşmacılarımıza, panelistlerimize söz vermek istiyorum. İlk olarak sözü Malezya Ülke Yatırım Fonu Kazanah Nasyonel Berhat'ın CEO'su Sayın Mohit İzani Gani'ye dönmek istiyorum. Sayın Gani, Kazanah'ın faaliyetleri, yatırım alanları ve proje finansmanı konusunda bize kısaca bilgi verebilir misiniz?
Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. First of all, thank you very much to the organizer of IFS for inviting me to this summit. It's always good to be back in this beautiful city of Istanbul, especially in this kind of weather. Perhaps I'm here to share some experience that we have gone through in terms of financing infrastructure development. Before that, if the chair can allow me to spare a few minutes on Kazanah, perhaps to know what sector that we cover, what sort of portfolio that we do in Kazanah. I think I have 6 slides that should be able to cover the 10 minutes or so in the presentation. As I said, we'll share some background on Kazanah, and I have 2 case studies. One is an exercise of privatizing toll road in Malaysia that the company raised up to $9.6 billion way back in 2012. And another one is a very interesting live project now. It's a construction of mass rapid transit system in KL, in Kuala Lumpur, to ease the congestion in Kuala Lumpur. Okay, some background of Kazanah. Kazanah is the strategic investment arm of the government of Malaysia. It was incorporated in 1993. We were only active in the last 10 years when we received the new mandate from the government. And it's wholly owned by the Ministry of Finance. We have 1 share owned by Lands Commissioner, because under Companies Act in Malaysia, there are at least 2 shareholders in the company. The Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Najib Tun Razak, is chairman of the board, and we have other board members in Kazanah that made up our board, coming from corporate captains in Malaysia and finance minister too, also in the board of Kazanah. We have very diverse investment portfolio. We have about 50 companies or so in Khazanah in various geographies. I'll share details later on. And we have RAV, reliable asset value, close to $42 billion that as of the financial year, audited account 31st December 2013. In terms of sector that we cover, as I said, various sectors, very diverse. We are in financial services, we are in healthcare, we are in infrastructure and construction, we are in media and telecommunications, we are in leisure and tourism, we are in property, power, transportation and logistics. In the coming slide, I'll share more details in terms of companies that we have in these sectors. The objectives of Khazanah, as I said, the new mandate came to Khazanah in 2004. That's, I would say, about 10 years ago. Previously, it was a mere custodian of shares for the government. However, in 2004, the Prime Minister before this, Tun Abdullah, requested Khazanah to have a new mandate, i.e. we had to be more aggressive in our investments and we have to expand our footprints beyond Malaysia. So we are to drive the shareholder value, we have to run company more efficiently and make sure that the corporate governance in the companies really prevail. We have also undertaken investments in new industries and markets with the objective to promote economic growth in Malaysia. Next, this is talk a bit more on the mandate that we have. As I mentioned earlier on, we have diversified investment portfolio across sectors and geographies. In terms of sectors I mentioned just now, I think I would say we don't do two sectors in Khazanah. One is oil and gas. Oil and gas, we have another investment arm of the government called Petronas. Petronas is undertaking oil and gas sector on behalf of the government, and we don't do plantations. Plantations is handled by another government-linked companies called Samdabi. So other than these two sectors, oil and gas and plantations, we can have our hands on. In terms of geography, as early as 2005, we have started our footprints in Singapore, Indonesia, and then in 2008, we opened our office in Beijing, China, and we moved on to Mumbai, India, the same year, open office. And then last year, we opened office in San Francisco to cover technology sector. And then most recently as well, we opened our office in this beautiful city of Istanbul in November last year. That because we have some interest in Turkey. Second mandate is to make sure that we streamline and restructure our legacy investments. When the government gave the mandate to Khazanah, as early as 93 earlier on, as I said, it's a mere custodian. It came with us companies that was run earlier on by the government. So we have to make sure that we really restructure the legacy assets, and once they become more efficient, we are allowed to divest our shareholding and plow back the money for new investments. And the third one, as I said earlier on, to increase shareholder value of our companies. In fact, we have run one program called GLC Transformation Program, launched in 2005, and the program ran for 10 years and should finish by next year, 2015. It's actually to really drive our companies to become more efficient, more profitable, and in turn, they should be able to pay dividends to Khazanah, and hopefully we can upload dividends to the government. Partly to plow back the money for new investments, new sectors, new region. Fourth one is investment in new markets. I'll share with you which geography that we cover in more detail later on. And also the fifth one is progressive divestment strategy. We have been paring down our assets to venture new sectors, new industries, and we have been very I would say very innovative in a way of divestment of our assets. In fact, in 2006, I was working with Brother Daud. on how to divest our assets. A structure that we had called exchangeable sukuk. In 2006, we raised $750 million. This sukuk is available for exchange in shares in our companies called Telekom Malaysia. And by the time it matured 5 years later, in 2011, the share price of Telecom hit the exchange price, and almost 100% of the shares were exchanged by the sukuk holders. This is an example of sectors that we cover. For example, I've bucketed into sectors here. Financial services, we have CIMB Group. CIMB Group is a bank, leading bank in Malaysia that have operations in Malaysia, in Singapore, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and in Philippines. They have also securities company in Hong Kong and Australia. We have Sun Life, we have Acibadem Sigota, we have ACR Takaful. And under the bucket of healthcare, we have IHH Healthcare Group. This company was listed 2 years ago in July 2012. And under IHH, we have companies like Acibadem, operations in Turkey. We have Pantai Hospitals with operations in Malaysia. We have Parkway Hospitals with operation in Singapore. It's not listed there, but we have also hospitals in India under the brand name of Apollo. Under infrastructure and construction, we have companies called UEM. We have Plus will cover under case study later on, that handles the highway concession from the north bordering Thailand and the south bordering Singapore. It's about 800 kilometers or so. We have UEM, we have Opus, and then under media and communications, we have Axiata. Axiata is a company that handles mobile business in the region. It started off a company in Malaysia called Celcom. After the establishment, the company has made acquisition in Singapore, in Indonesia, in Bangladesh, in India, and Sri Lanka. And now, the subscriber base of Axiata moved from initially 5 million to about 240 million now in the region. We have Telekom Malaysia that handles fixed line operations in Malaysia, and we have Pinewood Studios. Pinewood Studios is a collaboration that we had with Pinewood of UK for TV and movie production. It's, I would say, the largest production venue in the region. In fact, currently now they are doing movie production for US company called Marco Polo. I think it's a 1-year production series, and the booking for the venue has been long because we have interest from out of Bollywood, of Hong Kong for the set. Move on to leisure and tourism. We have Legoland in Iskandar, the first one in Asia. It's just across Singapore, where Iskandar is. We have Kidzania as well. It's a child role play edutainment entity. And we have property, we have operations in Iskandar, and then perhaps I can mention M&S. M&S is a property investment that we had together with Singapore. It's developing integrated development in Marina South in Singapore, 60% owned by Khazanah and 40% owned by Temasek of Singapore. Logistics and transportation, we own Malaysia Airports in Malaysia, and also we have 60% share in Sabia Gotchen here, ISG, and also we own Malaysia Airlines, about 70%. In terms of, for power sector, we have Tenaga Nasional, it's a national power company in Malaysia, and we have a joint venture company in Saudi, SWAC, that handles power and water project. This is a case study I want to feature. Perhaps I'll take a few minutes here. This is the highway concession. The background there. Plus is a company that we have together with another entity in Malaysia called Employees Provident Fund, the pension fund. That runs the highway from north to south. Together with that, they also have concessions for the bridges as well. The bridge that links Penang Island to the mainland, and also the island of Singapore to Malaysia. The sukuk was issued in January 2012, and as highlighted, is the world's largest sukuk issuance by far. I think it got rated even higher than Plus on its own standalone rating. It's just to make sure that the sukuk, for especially the longer dated one, more than 25 years, it gets very effective costs in terms of pricing, and to provide assurance to the investors, it was guaranteed by the government for that particular portion. And I had a summary of terms there, very briefly. Perhaps you can take your time to have a look at it later on. Next. Okay, this is something that live now in Malaysia. This is the project called MRT, Mass Rapid Transit in KL. And as usual, in big cities, the traffic congestion is always a problem, and there's a need for us to address this in Malaysia. It was launched by the government and the Prime Minister in July 2011. Hopefully with this completion, it will really ease the congestion in KL. As of July this year, it has spent about 8 billion ringgit, about 2.5 billion US dollars, and progress has been very commendable, about 48% for the moment, and I have some pictures of the progress there. This is just outskirt of city of KL, and it's about 51 kilometers spanning across from the north to south. Some background on the entity that's handling it. This is called Dana Infra. Dana Infra is a government entity under Ministry of Finance that's undertaking the funding for this. It was established in March, just before the launch of the project, March 2011. Many highlights there. To make it interesting, this first ever issuer that offers retail sukuk to everyone on the street. So anyone can just invest in the sukuk and claim that they have part of the project, of the transportation project. It's still new. I think the take-up, I would say, I want more taken up by the public. I think it's all about marketing and awareness to the public. I think the government, the entity want to do more and more of these tranches in future. And then a special feature of this program is that they can increase the size of the program anytime, just in case they need funding for this, as long as the common guarantee comes with it. As of September this year, which is this month, the company has issued about 11.7 billion ringgit for the construction of MRT. These are briefly the terms of the sukuk. So with that, I will pass on to the MC. I'm happy to take on questions thereafter. Thank you.
Sayın İzani Gani'ye bu ilginç sunumu için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Çok güzel proje örnekleri gördük. Şimdi Alman Maliye Bakanı'ndan Dr. Klaus Happe'ye dönmek istiyorum. Sayın Happe, daha önce söylemiştim, aynı zamanda G20 bünyesinde yürüyen bir çalışma grubunun, Investment Infrastructure Financing, yatırım altyapı finansmanı çalışma grubunun eş başkanı aynı zamanda. Dolayısıyla Sayın Happe, bize G20'deki bu çalışma grubunda yürüyen çalışmalara kısaca değindikten sonra Almanya olarak siz ne tür yenilikçi finansman enstrümanları üzerinde çalışıyorsunuz? Kısaca bir bilgi verebilir misiniz? Buyurun.
Thank you. Oh, there we are. Thank you very much for this nice introduction, and thank you for having me here at this wonderful conference. Under the Australian presidency, the so-called IIWG was created, Infrastructure Investment Working Group. And this working group had four work streams, of which Germany covered only one and a half together with Mexico. That was the MDB involvement. Then Germany covered the financial intermediation work stream, Another work stream that very much overlapped with a different work stream in G20 was the investment climate issue that very much overlaps with the framework group, and there were close interlinkages to a Canadian-headed working group. And the last one was a project preparation work stream co-chaired by Indonesia, and they created a big paper of what must be taken into account when creating a sound project at home that has much to do with capacity building and institutional building in the several countries. So these IA investment infrastructure working group should also cover, that was a wish of the ministers, long-term investment into SMEs. And we, Germany, did a certain work on that because Germany is always very interested in SMEs, but it's not only reflected in the title, but that doesn't mean that the subject wasn't covered in the last year. So what was our main input here? So we had several inputs into that working group, but it appeared that there were some overlaps with the financial market sector where more designated institutions are working on. So our main issue was here the subject we called the structure of standardized pooling vehicle. So the whole exercise was about pooling in infrastructure projects into one to prepare a sound basis and a more standardized homogeneous basis for smaller bracket investors that don't have the capacity to go into depth risk identification of any kind of project. So the idea was to have this homogeneous one here where you find all things at the same place as in the high quality SME documentation, where you find the same information at the same place at the documentation. You find the same kinds of projects. You find same currency there, so they exclude many risks that complicate things. We started to reflect on some basics here. So the first basic is, which you read here, finance versus funding. This is necessary to think about because we have some kind of customers who think that finance means funding. So mostly people from the development world are used to have a project finance, for example, by World Bank or other development banks, who just pay for it, which is more or less a grant. What we are thinking here is that it is third-party finance, not by the third-party paid. The financier is one party and third party is the other one. So the question is who bears the cost, and this is the only question whether it's the taxpayer or the end user. So these two options we see. Most of the cases we have the taxpayer paying it, but we try to shift over more to an end user funded project. The same is the question with a general project budget, cost stemming from the general budget of the public party, or simply project budget, which are very closely related to those projects and may not subsidize anything else. And that leads us to that last basic, which is political interest vis-à-vis a resilient and sustainable business plan. So coming from those bases, we try to develop this kind of Linux approach. I do not hope that I do infringe here some kind of legal rights on that name, but we called it Linux because that should be an open platform, open for any kind of investment, notably from conventional finance and Islamic finance. And we try to identify several elements here. So we want to see here sustainable projects with a defined risk-sharing structure, which means the political risk on the one side by the initiator and the business risk on the other side with the management of the pool. We see a need there for an independent revenue for forecast and credit rating for each project, because the revenue forecast is key for any investor, whether this is a sensitive investment for him and which pays out in the end. We was looking at a minimum of standardization of contractual basis. There we had the idea and we had the offer from industry to set up a very informal ginger group to work on some contractual forms. We could very much use work that is done in the UK already. The Singaporeans came up with this idea of a transferable guarantee. So we have in project finance typically two or three big loans from financing banks. And if these loans are guaranteed, the refinancing loan must have a new guarantee. And the idea is now from Singapore that the guarantee should be able to skip from loan to loan, whatever is needed in this project. And the last effect is, of course, if this is done on a national-wise basis, we have some side effects because the national financial markets will be developed by the whole servicing industry that certainly will develop around the pool. And that led us to a very complicated and complex structure, which our task is in the future to get that more simplified, perhaps under the Turkish presidency, we will see. So what we have typically is a public initiator of a project. He should do the whole project preparation. That is what the Indonesian friends did. And he should also bear all of the political risk. So what all political risk involved in a project should be bear with the initiator of the project and should be finalized before the project comes to implementation. Now this is the implementation vehicle we have. In the center, the pooling vehicle, so where we could imagine that the public initiator takes an equity share in that pool of about less than 50% and provides a guarantee, if necessary, for the startup of the project. So we heard in the speech from the Malaysian colleague that project was completely guaranteed by the public budget. This is the typical situation we see, but our ambitious goal is here to come to end-user related projects which only have a limited guarantee in time, which lapses when the project hopefully becomes viable. So we have the parties involved here. I mentioned the servicing industries. Then we have the private construction companies, which do normally bring the finance with them. They also should have an equity share in those pooling vehicles. And then, of course, we have the banks. They are sometimes with a private company, sometimes they come on their own into that vehicle. Here we have then the institutional investors, which could invest into that vehicle. And here we have all these capital market tools, which we could imagine, but they are not necessary to be covered in this working group. But this is because this is extremely capital market related. So we could think of securitization, but a different group in G20 is doing principles for secure securitization, and we leave it up to them. All we have to see here that all the concept of the idea doesn't contradict any principles. They are set up for securitization, for the HQ, high quality securitization on the financial market side. And we of course have the Sukuk investors here, and that is pretty important because this vehicle was presented to the Islamic Finance Council to get their advice on them. And their reaction was slightly positive, to say it is important to see that this pooling vehicle is the owner of all the assets, and Sukuk investors, bonds investors, could have their kind of equity investment into that pool. So all the ingredients is in the pool. I'm not going to read. I cannot read because my glasses are too bad here. And the last work stream we entered into here is the MDB involvement, because MDBs play a very important role in every infrastructure investment in emerging economies and development markets. And we do need them. We said they are optional, but you could imagine for example, an energy project or a gold mining project or whatever that could fly even in a developing country without MDB involvement. But we see that as a need, and the MDB certainly could help us with their knowledge and with their involvement to have a certain kind of high-level standardization within that project. This is something which is very important to our development people. We have to closely coordinate with that the social standards are not undermined by the pure investment needs of this pooling vehicle. So I hope I kept my 10 minutes. Thank you.
Doktor Abbey'e çok teşekkür ediyorum. Kamu özel işbirliği projelerinde doğru proje seçimi en önemli konulardan bir tanesi. Almanya'nın da bu konu az önce dinlediğiniz çok orijinal bir yaklaşımı var. Bunun G20 bünyesinde çok dikkatle incelendiğinden eminim. Şimdi Sayın Muhammed Davut'a dönmek istiyorum. Sayın Davut, sukuk ihraçlarında çok öne çıkan HSBC'de üst düzey yönetici olarak çalışmakta. Sayın Davut, bize öncelikli olarak İslami finans piyasalarındaki son gelişmelerden, sukuk piyasalarından biraz bilgi verdikten sonra İslami finansmanın altyapı finansmanında kullanımına dair yöntemler, enstrümanlar ve örnek projeler hakkında bilgi verebilir misiniz? Buyurun.
Great, thank you, Hakan Bey, and it's good afternoon, everybody, and it's a great pleasure to be here today. I'll talk briefly about Islamic finance and the role that Islamic finance can play in project financing. I think it's fair to say that this is an industry which is becoming more and more mainstream. It started off 30 years ago as a private sector initiative in a number of countries. We saw certain countries taking a big initiative to develop this, notably Malaysia. But over the last 30 years, it's grown and grown, and its importance in markets in the Middle East, in Asia, but also I think increasingly globally, is certainly becoming noticed. And you'll see that over the last 5 to 7 years, we've seen a very strong growth in this market. Now, there are estimates that indicate that this market is worth anywhere between 1.3 to 1.5 trillion dollars. Certainly, over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, we feel that this market will have a very, very profound effect and a very profound impact on economies here within Turkey, in the Middle East and Asia. And I think as a result of that, what we're seeing is increasing desire by economies outside of the core markets to tap into this for their own and to attract Islamic liquidity into their domestic markets. So we'll see that, this market, I think over the course of the next, 10 years, will continue to grow at a very, very healthy level of, and also bear in mind that in many of the markets where Islamic finance is operating in, the actual penetration in terms of banking penetration is actually clearly very, very low. And what Islamic finance does is actually, mobilize the additional liquidity funds which are typically residing outside of the banking sector in certain cases really for religious purposes. Why is this market important? I think in the context of the Gulf, you'll see that over the course of the next 10 years, that the banking assets which are comprised by Islamic assets will be somewhere close to 50%. Already in Saudi, the reason why the data here is ex-Saudi is that in Saudi, if you look at the retail market, the majority of the retail assets in Saudi are all Islamic. That is a market where at least 60 to 70% of the overall banking assets are going to be Islamic. In the course of the rest of the Gulf, by 2020, we envisage that anywhere between 30 to 40% of banking assets will be in Islamic format. In Turkey here, it's still very low. I think you're starting off from a low base. But I think with the development and with the establishment of new banks, that could, by 2020, it could be anywhere between sort of 5 to 7.5%. So clearly, the market in the core regions of the Gulf and in Asia is going to command significant momentum and strength. In terms of the Sukuk market, that's a market which I have a particular focus on. Sukuk has really developed over the last 10 years, and it is the alternative to bonds. And it developed out in Asia, in countries such as Malaysia, which has really driven the development of this market, and it's then been exported across into the Gulf. And over the last 2 to 3 years, we've seen the development of the Sukuk market here in Turkey in the form of rent certificates which have been issued by the government over the course of the last 2 years, both in dollar format and Turkish lira format, as well as being offered by the participation banks. So this is a market which has grown very steadily. The volumes this year you see are around $25 billion, down slightly on years earlier, but for no other reason than I think some of the earlier years you saw some pretty large transactions coming into the market. So this is a market which is going to continue to grow. I think its importance is symbolized by new countries issuing Sukuk. Earlier this year, UK government issued a relatively small Sukuk, 200 million sterling. Last week, Hong Kong government issued $1 billion. And again, it's a desire to be able to attract Islamic liquidity into these markets as a starting point, and then really looking at how Islamic liquidity, how Islamic finance can address some of the broader financing needs of these economies, particularly infrastructure. In the markets in the Gulf, Sukuk now accounts for almost 50% of the total volume of issuance. Apologies. And what's interesting is the type of transaction that we're seeing. I think historically we've seen governments access this market, we've seen corporates accessing this market, but increasingly there is a high degree of R&D taking place in this market. And I think one of the key and important developments that we're seeing in this market is the idea that Sukuk can be used for infrastructure development. Because the idea here is Islamic finance is all about financing the real economy. The traditional modes of Islamic finance were very much equity-based, were very much based around trade, funding trade, were very much based around construction of assets and constructing and developing infrastructure. So the traditional modes of Islamic finance can actually be used extremely well to fund infrastructure. And what we're doing is by marrying modern conventional project bond techniques in with Islamic finance mechanics and practices, I think we're now beginning for the first time over the last 2-3 years to really develop in a real serious way project finance in the form of Sukuk, which can help really to develop and fund the infrastructure needs of governments and countries. And if you look at project finance, really, I mean, the whole basis of project finance, the idea here that you're relying on very much on the underlying cash flows of a project to be able to facilitate payments to financiers. That by its very essence, where the financiers are taking the underlying risk in projects, that itself is very Islamic finance friendly. And what we've seen in markets such as Saudi Arabia, which has really sort of spearheaded the development of infrastructure funding, we've seen governments IPOing project finance companies. And in Saudi, which is a very interesting market, because there is such a strong movement there, or participation by retail investors. The IPO is sold to retail investors, and if a stock is labeled as an Islamic stock, it will then have a far wider bid, because in Saudi, given the conservative nature of the society, there is a very strong preference by retail customers then to be able to buy into stocks which are Islamic in nature. What we've then seen is that the project companies then, when they then raise the underlying funding for the projects, those projects are done on an Islamic nature. So for example, over the last couple of years, you've seen 2 very large petrochemical projects which have been sponsored by the government through Aramco, in the form of JVs with international partners, particularly in the oil sector. And very significant volumes have been raised. These have been greenfield projects. Historically, in the context of the Middle East, we've seen very few projects which are brownfield projects. So project financing being done on existing cash flows. So what we've done here in the context of Saudi, the government and particularly Aramco has guaranteed, has provided sponsor guarantees in the form of the construction periods. But once the construction period lapses, then the sukuk holders are very much then dependent upon the strength of the underlying cash flows to be able to service payments on the sukuk. And these have been sukuks which have been issued for 10 to 15 years in the domestic market, raising anywhere between $1 to $2 billion. So these are new initiatives which have been really spearheaded in the domestic Saudi market, which we hope will form the basis for ongoing developments over the course of the next 4 or 5 years, particularly in the dollar market. And just to end, I think what I'll probably just talk about lastly is the recent sukuk issued by the government of Indonesia, which is a 10-year, $1.5 billion transaction. And the reason why that's important is that sukuk, the structures historically which have been deployed by governments for sukuk transactions have been sale and leaseback structures, where existing assets have been identified and those assets have been sold to SPVs and then leased back. Increasingly governments are running out of assets, and increasingly governments, and we have a very similar case in Turkey, governments are telling us, okay, how can we access the international capital markets to fund infrastructure? And for the very first time, this particular sukuk, which was issued just 2 weeks ago, has a core element to it, where part of the proceeds or the funding will actually go to the government to fund identifiable projects which are sponsored by the government. So these could be in the form of hospitals, this could be in the form of schools, it could be in the form of toll roads. These will ultimately be, the underlying credit risk will still very much be with the government, but from a use of proceeds perspective, we are now moving towards structures where we're not on day one, we're not identifying tangible assets, we're actually using the proceeds to fund assets which over the life of the sukuk will be developed, and once they're developed, they are then leased. I think this is a very real welcome development for the sukuk market, and it just shows that how the market is developing and adapting to the needs of governments for channeling Islamic finance towards infrastructure development. So I'll leave it with that and I hand over to the moderator, Hakan Bey.
Sayın Muhammed Davut'a çok teşekkür ediyorum bu değerli bilgiler ve güzel proje örnekleri için. Şimdi Sayın Christoph Tiskens'e dönmek istiyorum. Sayın Tiskens, Alman Kalkınma Bankası KfW'nun Güneydoğu Avrupa ve Türkiye Direktörü. Sayın Tiskens, bize KfW'nun faaliyetleri, enstrümanları ve proje örnekleri konusunda bilgiler verebilir misiniz? Buyurun.
Thank you very much, Hakan Bey. Thank you very much to the Istanbul Summit for inviting KfW. In my brief talk, I would like to make you familiar with KfW's overall approach here in Turkey, and to share some examples of our toolbox with you. So in general, of course, we believe as development bankers that innovative development financing has become more relevant in the wake of the financial crisis, which started, I think, exactly 6 years ago. And this is due to the fact that we observe shrinking fiscal spaces all over the region, not only here. And we see that the banks, the financial sector is reluctant with regard to the deleveraging process. They are ongoing. And this poses some constraints on long-term finance, and therefore, of course, pose constraints on long-term investments. And the development banks, of course, has to somehow to fill this gap by providing finance for new ideas, new markets, and to play a role also as a facilitator to bring together donors from every side, from the public funds, from the international financial institutions, and as well as the private capital. And for KfW, we are very active in this role. You may know KfW is more or less the biggest national promotional bank in Europe, at least, with a worldwide representation. And in the meantime, we have a balance sheet volume of about 500 billion euros and annual financial commitments of about 70 billion euros, of which 20 billion euros are allocated outside Germany. And 1/3 of the funds committed are allocated to climate protection measurements. So in Turkey, we can look back on a very long and very successful cooperation, starting back in 1962. And for more than a decade, we have been here on the ground with 3 rep offices, 2 in Istanbul and 1 in Ankara. This reflects our active role, and one can say that Turkey is one of the most important countries for KfW outside Germany. We do our business in 3 main sections. The development bank, which is my home port, so to say, is targeting public finance needs. Last year, for example, we have committed 336 million euros in this field. Then we have the DEG, which provides funds for the private sector development. They had committed 88 million euros last year. And EPEX is our commercial arm of KfW, and they had a commitment volume of 483 million euros. This underpins the significance of Turkey for KfW and for Germany. And in the remit of our business scope, we dispose of a wide range of instruments which are applicable here, starting with loans, mezzanine structures, equity, but we can also provide grants, especially for technical assistance in order to foster project developments. And last but not least, we are involved in structured funds. With regard to the financial sector, which is a huge important pillar of our cooperation, we provide funds in order to deepen and to diversify the funding position of the financial sector. This is in order to improve access to finance in general for the smaller, very small companies, medium-sized companies, as a backbone also of the Turkish economy, and of course in order to support the sector to branch out into new markets and new areas of business, such as sustainable development, energy efficiency, renewable energies, and so on and so forth, as a main underlying development also for Turkey. So far the theory. I have with me some examples. So one example which we have developed quite successfully here in Turkey, together with our partners here, was the establishment, the setup of covered bonds. Covered bonds are bonds which are backed, secured by SME pools. This has had a quite substantial impact because by doing this we have established a new asset class and we allowed for further diversification of the Turkish banks, especially in Turkish lira funding, and of course ultimately to foster here SME finance business in Turkish banks. We have organized, or we have run through a couple of projects here. One KfW, my institution, was with Schicker Bank, and the other with DEG and DenizBank. Both programs, to my knowledge, are very well accepted in the market. Another area where we strive to develop the market, it is the structured fund area. Structured funds where we are investing in are designed to leverage public funds with other funds by other donors and international financial institutions, and of course to include private money into these funds. This is in order to develop further innovation and allow for tapping in a very flexible way into new markets, for example in the SME market or in the environmental area. The benefits of these structured funds are principally this that they contribute to donor harmonization, which as such increase the efficiency of these vehicles, and this structured funds provides for new opportunities for public and private investors. And the two flagship funds, so to speak, are also active here in Turkey. One very famous fund, one can say, is our flagship structured fund, is the EFSI. EFSI is the world's largest microfinance fund, with shareholder commitments in the meantime of about 1 billion euros, and the target of this fund is to foster very small businesses. In the meantime, more than 500,000 SMEs could benefit from this fund. The GGF, the Green for Growth Fund, is the EFSI's younger and smaller sister, so to speak. It aims at fostering the energy efficiency markets throughout the region, with a shareholder commitment of about 300 million euros. And also this fund has in the meantime achieved remarkable impacts here in the energy efficiency market, and provides for energy efficiency as such, and for CO2 reduction. This is the fund sector. And last of all, I have to bring on the table here an example, not from Turkey, but it's from India, where we have established a residential housing program in a way that we have established a so-called APEX structure. APEX means that one designated institution, in this case the residential housing, the National Housing Bank, is responsible for the channeling of funds throughout the financial sector. The clue in this program is that we have integrated here a so-called performance-based approach. There was developed an underlying metric to measure the impact of measurements on the energy efficiency state of a given building. And this was done by two famous or reputable technical institutions from Germany and India. And the key building blocks of this program are the introduction of energy efficiency labels, and this labels provides for a proven quality standard of a given measurement, and determines in this way the conditions of the loans. And further on, another very important item is that we have built up a very intense cooperation between clients, building developers, banks, and the consulting industry in order to make the market, so to say. This program resembles of a program we have already established in Germany, which is very, very huge, big, and successful. It has had a strong impact on the energy efficiency market in Germany, and I can imagine that beyond India, one can also adopt or adapt this program in other countries. For example, why not in Turkey? To round off, I hope that I could give you some flavor of our work here in Turkey. We believe that KfW can contribute to innovative finance, always having in mind that we are doing these programs and these efforts in order to improve the living conditions of the people in the countries, to improve the economic development, and last but not least, the environmental conditions beyond this investment. Thank you very much.
Sayın Tiskens, çok teşekkür ediyorum. Böylelikle konuşmacılarımızın sunum turlarını tamamlamış bulunuyoruz. Sayın Tiskens bize sürdürülebilir kalkınma odaklı Hükümet Kalkınma Bankası perspektifini güzel bir şekilde sundular. Sayın İzani Gani bize Sovereign Wealth Fund perspektifini sundu ve bazı güzel proje örnekleri verdi. Sayın Alp'den bu alanda G20'de yürüyen çalışmalar hakkında bilgi alma fırsatı bulduk. Ayrıca kendileri bize PPP köyü, kamu özel işbirliği alanında proje seçimine yönelik bir yaklaşımlarını sundular. Sayın Davut bize İslami finans piyasaları hakkında ayrıntılı ve güncel bilgi sundular. Konuşmacılarımıza sundukları bilgiler, özellikle zamanlamaya uydukları için ve yine çok uzak yollardan gelerek panelimize katıldıkları için teşekkür ediyorum. Şimdi birkaç tane soru cevap alabiliriz. Aslında programda bizim için ayrılan zamanı tamamlamış bulunuyoruz ama 10 dakika geç başladık. Tam 1 saat oldu. Birkaç soru alabiliriz sorunuz varsa. Buyurun. Buyurun.
Well, thank you. My question goes to Mr. Gani from Kazanan. Apparently, you have invested in various, sectors in a very diversified geography. My question is very straightforward and short. How do you pick up the companies you would like to invest? In other words, are you involved in the search process, or do you just, wait and, see for the offers from investment banks? Thank you.
Thank you. We have a process in the office. For example, in the sector that we want to go in, we typically have a study of the sector. For example, I can quote, for example, when we wanted to venture into healthcare, about 6 years ago, we had a study on healthcare sector. The study showed that there's a good potential for us to get involved in as a strategic to the government, to the country, and therefore, as early as 2006, I remember, or 7, we acquired our own hospitals in Kuala Lumpur called Pantai. It was initially it was listed and majority owned by investors in Singapore. That there is a need for us to make sure that homegrown hospital to be owned by us, and at the same time we started to have investments. For example, 10% in Apollo Hospital in India, and then if you are familiar with the corporate fight that we had with Fortis Group of India when we wanted to acquire Parkway Hospitals in Singapore in 2010. And then we had a very good collaboration with a group here, Acibadem Hospital. And all this we wrap up and listed under IHH. IHH now is the second largest healthcare provider in the world after a company based in US. So for each sector where we go in, we typically had a study on the particular sector. Most recently, I can share, we feel that leisure and tourism is a sector that should be strategic to the country of Malaysia. We noticed that tourists don't stay in Malaysia for too long because there's not enough attractions, or there's not enough high-end hotels in Malaysia. So therefore now we are really ramping up this initiative That's why we brought in Legoland, for example, to Iskandar. We have acquired big area of development in Langkawi Island. For those of you who have been to Langkawi, Langkawi is an island just north of Malaysia. Beautiful beaches, pristine jungle, and we acquired about 1,000 acres of land, and our intention to preserve the jungle and build hotels around it. Also, we about 4 years ago, we acquired a tract of land in South Johor on the east coast of Johor called Desaru. Desaru, in 2 years' time, will have water theme park that have dolphins, swimming around, and we have high-end hotels being planned for that. It should be ready in 2-3 years' time. So hopefully, with all those initiatives, tourists will stay longer in Malaysia. They will fly to KL and go off to the island in Langkawi and go down south to Iskandar. So hopefully, this will contribute to the national income of Malaysia. So those are the example sectors that we had to study first, and then we embarked on it. Of course, in terms of process before we actually invest in any particular country and sector, investment process, as usual, it has to hit our hurdle rate of investment hurdle rate. It has to go through the risks of the country. It has to go through, I would say, various stages of investment criteria, and thereafter, only once it has been cleared of all the criteria, then eventually you will make a decision to invest. Thank you.
Başka soru yoksa panelimizi kapatıyoruz. Bizi dinlediğiniz için teşekkür ederiz.
Sayın İsmail Sönmez sahnemize geldiler. Panelistlerimize bir kez daha teşekkür ediyoruz ve fuaye alanında sizleri çay kahve ikramımıza bekliyoruz.